All right, good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here this morning. This is actually a panel. This is not the dating game, in spite of the chair arrangement here off of it. So this panel is about too many point solutions, too little integration. So that's what we're going to discuss. And I say discuss because hopefully that involves you, the audience, as well. We'd like this to be interactive. Interactive is interesting. Batch mode from us to you is boring. So please do ask your questions off of that. Our panel this morning, we have essentially three different groups of people represented up here. First of all, I should say who I am. My name is Tim Mather, and I'm the CISO at Cadence, which is an EDA firm here in the Valley. I am a customer of the security vendors' products. And we also have another customer up here this morning as well, and that's Justin Somaini, Chief Trust Officer for Box. Say hello, Justin.
Hello, Justin.
Say welcome to the audience. Bachelor number one, yes. Okay, so we have two customers here. We have someone who funds security startups, and that's Yoav Leitersdorf, and Yoav is the managing partner for YL Ventures. Say hello.
Hello, Yoav here.
And then we have three security vendors up here this morning. We have one small, one medium, and one large. So qualifying as our small for now, hoping to get much bigger, is Gidi Cohen, who is the CEO of Skybox. Say hello, Gidi.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay. Qualifying as medium, we have Ron Davidson, who is the head of security services for Checkpoint. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
And then just in an attempt to have some gender diversity on the panel here, we actually fired Chris Calvert. No, just kidding. Chris had a personal matter to take care of, so he's not able to join us this morning. So in the spirit of the World Series, we have a designated hitter here, and that's Mary Karnes. And Mary is the Strategic Portfolio Manager in Solution Innovations and Services Engineering for a little company called HP. Say hello, Mary.
Hi, everybody.
And that's HP. I'm not sure which half you're going to here, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. So anyway, that's our panelists. And again, we're talking about too many point solutions and too little integration. That's the hypothesis, and we welcome your questions. So let's start with a fact here, and I'm going to start with Ron because Checkpoint has recently announced that they have a 7-company alliance off of that. So just to be provocative, how much, if you will, substance is there to that announcement, Ron, or is that what I refer to as a Barney agreement? I love you, you love me.
No, that's a real integration that's really in the mode of this conversation. So yeah, we actually stay away from some of the alliances that we're not really sure about the actual content or benefit for us and for our customers. But in this specific case, integrating in this sense, in this case, threat intelligence is something that we see a real need on our customer side, and therefore we invested in the platform to support that, and we are right now recruiting partners. You mentioned the 7 initial ones, but there are more to come.
Okay, and Justin, from your perspective, these types of agreements, whether it's Checkpoint or anyone else, do you see much substance in them, or do you feel that there is indeed too little integration?
Well, I think we need to break them down a little bit because there's different types of partnerships or agreements, and one could be a lead gen, which is really just for sales, not necessarily integration. Another one could actually be true integration, which really solves an overall problem for the customer, which could be say an e-discovery problem, which includes many different facets of how the customer manages processes and content and transactions within a company. So if it's more of the latter, there's a significant value if it's really hitting on what that new model looks like, what are the customer's problems or what are my problems, and I've got many, but how it actually drives into the solution set holistically versus the burden being on the customer from doing a significant amount of integration, which historically is a problem, creating connectors or intermediaries, which has fundamentally been one of the biggest problems within the security industry historically.
Okay, and of course, we can't use the A word here. None of the vendors have agents. Oh, don't say that. Call it a connector, call it a forwarder. Don't call it an agent. So Yoav, you've got some strong feelings on this with regards to the integration here. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Well, I just feel like the kind of stuff that Checkpoint's been doing, which I find fantastic. I think there's been also some other efforts in the industry to collaborate. So I've got some examples here that I just kind of collected from my from what I've seen in the last few months. So the Cyber Threat Alliance, I'm sure some of you have heard, and that's more to share threat intelligence information. So that's Fortinet, McAfee, Palo Alto Networks, and Symantec are the founders. But there's a lot more joining, and that's to share threat intelligence. And I'm sure HP will tell us about HP Threat Central, which again is also about sharing, collaborating, sharing information. And they've been working with Atlas and a bunch of other vendors to share information. And I think that customers don't really need to do much to leverage. So they go into the the dashboards, the management consoles of these main products, whether it's Checkpoint or whether it's HP or any of the others, and it's a very easy sort of checkbox type integration in order to factor in data from other vendors. That's what we've seen.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there because sharing is not integration. So I draw a distinct difference between the two. There are tons of threat feeds that are out there. Every security vendor has their own threat feed. But that's not an integration of features. That's sharing of information. So when we talk about integration of features, our default is APIs. But that's just for features. I'm still not seeing much in the management space. Gidi?
Yeah, I can add to that because maybe we are still small growing though, a lot. But I think there is a big management challenge right out there that at the end of the day, it's not just about content or information. It's not about just API or technical integration. It's about actually integrating the security management processes in a way that organizations can take whatever investment they want to make in HP, Checkpoint, other vendors' gears, and actually make sure that they are being applied in a way that can manage security. Skybox happened to be one out of few vendors that are actually focusing on actually dealing with the security management layer by providing both the technical integration. We have integration with about 100 different products out of the box, but also the process integration such that the organizations can have one place where they can actually run the entire process and manage security, get visibility, deal with vulnerabilities. We see a tremendous demand for that because it's a big issue.
Okay. And Mary, I mean, you're obviously from a large vendor, and you're supposed to be, not that I'm being derogatory, but supposed to be all about integration. So tell us about what HP is doing specifically in the security space.
Right. Well, so there is Threat Central to share ideas because I think as an industry, there's not enough integration, but I want to touch on the reason why that's so important. When I talk to the CISOs of these Fortune 15 companies, so a lot of times I'm dealing with big enterprises, so that's the context that I look at things, they have to make decisions in a timely fashion that impact the operations of the company. So do I think I'm under distributed denial of service? Do I think this is an advanced persistent threat? If so, I push a big red button on the wall, and I can stop operations, I can cost a lot of money, but there's two outcomes here. One, great, I saved the day, I saved us from making the headlines. The other outcome is I just spent a lot of social capital within my company for no reason, and it's very hard for me to gain that back. So these CISOs are looking for clear information, and that can come from Threat Central, sharing information so I can more quickly discern what's happening. But I also need these tools to talk to each other. So we're doing a lot with big data and analytics and pulling everything in one place. But it's certainly not integration or API. I've been trying to think about analogies in other industries that could be interesting to look at because, for example, when skyscrapers are built, there's a lot of deep expertise and they're not integrated together. The way they become integrated together is there's a very detailed project plan, but at every key decision point, everybody comes together and talks about the risk, what they're seeing, what the costs are, and they make the decisions together. And we're just not there in the security community yet.
Justin, you want?
Yeah, so just kind of listening and dovetailing back on a couple of comments, I would probably break it down to your management layer, your control layer. Is going back to the basic control levels of security. So you got detective, preventative, and corrective controls. At the very earliest stage is integration on detective controls. How do I get feeds from various areas, but it's very difficult to start the implementation for historical software development on-premise models to get all the way into preventative or corrective controls. What's really interesting is as we look at the software or the security solutions coming out nowadays, it's really driving controls to where content transactions are. So a lot more of these solutions are cloud-based. They're interactive in regards to the cloud services, which really drives a RESTful or an open API model. That dramatically changes our ability to do integrations. One, it pushes the burden from the customer to the partners directly and removes the customer out of the laborious effort of having to do that. It also moves it from a software development process strictly over to a business development process. So that integration, that certification, if you will, between the vendors becomes directly on the business side versus something that might have been a nice little project that one or two developers did on behalf of one customer for one deal. So this model is dramatically shifting. In addition to that, it's also placing the onus for cloud providers and security vendors to really create an open API platform, which unfortunately the vast majority do not have. But it's a good thing that it's starting to change.
So, Yoav, do you want to
Yeah, well, I think one of the challenges with vendors cooperating is really who owns the customer and who's getting the lion's share of the revenues. I think that many times you'll find that whoever owns the dashboard or wherever the customer is coming in contact with the technology most often, it's the vendor that's going to kind of get the lion's share of the revenues and then potentially work with other vendors on corporations, but they'll then see, sometimes even the crumbs of of the deal. So I think that's what's creating some challenges for vendors to cooperate more closely.
Yeah, I mean, we have a slightly different view on that. What we're saying, we're serving primarily very large enterprises. And again, we're not HP in size, not Checkpoint in size. I think that the key question is what kind of business problems you solve for the customer. Because you solve big problems, you're going to get the lion's share of the budget. You're solving niche problems, you are not. So I don't think it's about dashboard or not dashboard. I think that it's about the magnitude of the problem and the effectiveness of the solution. And at least what we've seen, again, small vendor, I know you're investing in way smaller vendors, right, early stage vendors. I think it can make a big impact if they solve a real problem to the customer, regardless if it's in the control layer or management layer, etc. I think there's a lot of opportunity for getting to customers, again, if you get the mind share, and you do it only if you solve some real problems there.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why this becomes all the more important for the integration is the point products themselves are getting more and more niche. They're getting deeper, but narrower in breadth as far as their capabilities. So the list of products that I need gets ever longer, which the CIO reminds me about, as well as the fact that nothing ever seems to come off the list yet. Still waiting for AV to fall off the list at this point. That would be nice. But as we get more niche, as we get narrower here and more of these, this just drives the need that says I've got to have integration. And it's just not happening. Again, the default when it occurs seems to be open APIs, but what else? What's next? So, Mary, let me pick on you for just a moment, please, or pick on HP. HP have your own challenges just integrating within your portfolio of products that you own now. What does HP do as far as integration with the other so-called gorillas, Microsoft, Cisco, for example? What's going on there?
Right. So I can't speak too much to what HP is doing with Microsoft and Cisco, but when I think about the deep niche technologies that are getting more narrow and more deep, and then I sit in a room with CISOs that tell me, I don't have the people to use these tools. So you've just explained a lot of great tools to me, and I don't have the people to use them. Now you're asking me to know about a new database. 40% of my staffing requests are unfilled, and it's because I can't find the people. So what HP is doing is trying to build expert systems that are designed also for the generalist. So we're trying to reduce complexity, and that can be through integration or through technology that's a lot easier to consume, because we can't there's only so many point solutions an enterprise can realistically manage. And so as we think about innovations, we really have to think about the end-to-end situation with the shortage of staffing.
So integration in general is difficult. So let me give you a couple of examples, and I'll go specifically to the cybersecurity examples because there's a bigger discussion about integration versus niche products in general. So at least for us internally, integrating our network products with our endpoint products is a big issue. It's a huge investment. It's an ongoing effort. It will never end. And our customers will never feel that we've achieved everything that can be achieved along this line of integration. But there are easier issues. The one that you mentioned in the beginning with threat intelligence, I think that we should be at the point where our customers, everybody's customers, can basically subscribe to any threat intelligence feed just by clicking a button. There should be, the standards are almost fully there. The integration of different feeds into this a whole feed that will go into your enforcement points is there, and it should be as easy as it is right now with our partners. If one of our customers is interested in CrowdStrike intelligence or iSight Partners intelligence or FishLabs intelligence, they just go into the customer portal, they click a box, they pay a few bucks a month on top of what they paid already, but it's there. The intelligence goes directly to their enforcement points, it's enforcing the gateways, and they are done. No additional integration needs to be
So I'm going to push back on you here, because again, I mean, that is, in my opinion, that's not sharing, that's consumption. Okay, all I'm doing is taking feeds and consuming them. When we're talking about true threat sharing, we're talking about some sort of federated model that after I've consumed that information, I can share it with my other business units, my partners, someone else. So those of you who are vendors sitting up here, how many of you have support right now today for Styx Taxi, for example? I'm not seeing any hands.
Yeah,
okay?
The answer would be we can consume it, but it's not always easy to expose it.
So I can consume it, but that doesn't mean that I can actually share it with whomever I want. And that's
HP's Threat Central uses Styx and Taxi for information sharing.
Okay, and do you have a federated model that goes along with that supports that sharing? So I can determine whoever I want to share with and what components I can share with?
Yeah, because we have clients that are in certain industries and only want to share data with trusted people or just with HP, so you choose who you're comfortable sharing and what you're comfortable sharing, and things are anonymized first.
Very good.
Yeah, I want to add at least our view on that. And picking up on threat intelligence specifically, what we are saying is that the challenge there is actually not the sharing. I think the challenge is that the integration on the receiving part is with people and not systems. What does it mean? I don't know if much you know about Skybox, but we have almost 500 Global 2000 customers, very big deployments. Very few of them have a well-defined process to deal with threat intelligence, not talking about a team that deals with that, and not talking about systems that help them actually consume it and do something useful with it. So I think that the challenge there is that there's integration between, it's kind of like an open pipe, right? You can share a lot and they have different standards and sticks and whatever you want, but there's going to be more information that less people can consume. And at least what we are seeing in enterprise is they just don't have any systematic way to consume it. It's not integrated with their business processes. It's integrated with their email system where they are going to have some a shared whatever system to get alerts from. And that's it.
Okay. Just a reminder, questions from the audience are welcome, so if you have some, please raise your hand. So let's come back. Mary, you and I were chatting earlier a little bit about, I'm going to say, a more fundamental problem here. When we want to do integration, and we want to do integration between network-based and host-based, for example, whether it's within my company's products or not, how many of these products actually integrate real well with the CMDBs? And how accurate is that data in the CMDB, which then I'm hopefully relying on for my endpoint products?
Right, so the CMDB is the list of all of the assets in your environment. And so Shell Shock was the most recent, widely exposed breach. And so when I saw people dealing with Shell Shock, first they say, okay, what if my systems are vulnerable to bash? And I don't know, right? I don't have a list because my asset tool isn't updated. I'm constantly acquiring companies, merging, connecting networks. It's really hard to keep control of my assets. So now I have to pretend like I'm an attacker, scan my network to find out where I'm vulnerable. So now I have a list of everything I'm vulnerable of. Well, that's great. And say you invented some really great tool to help solve that problem for me. Who's going to apply that tool? Who's going to run the patch? I don't know who owns each of those systems. So the integration, I think, needs to keep in mind that in the security industry, we don't even have the basics covered yet. We're being asked to respond to advanced persistent threat. We can't even manage our assets properly. So that's really a big challenge. And the other connection I see coming in with integration that lines up is the line between IT operations and cybersecurity tends to get blurred, and they're coming together. And the security community wants to say, if I see an attack, I want to shut down that firewall service and have a tool that automatically integrates. But like I said before about spending the social capital, you have to make sure that information is really solid before you start shutting things down.
I think the first thing to do there is to fire that IT ops person and hire somebody who knows what the hell they're doing.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the way we're thinking about it is this really active, agile team that can just go around like with sneakers on, running around, shutting off ports, but they have to be trusted and really smart.
I mean, we've solved some of these problems at scale, getting to 500,000 or 1 million servers or assets. I mean, companies have done this, and that's a little bit on the extreme edge, don't get me wrong. But asset management has been around for a long, long time. The problem is diligence of the IT team to manage it properly and putting compensating controls in to identify systems that come onto the network that are unknown.
Maybe we should put it back on the vendors, right? Maybe there are no good solutions to actually allow IT operations that you have in place to actually deal with it. I mean, we, again, take just a sample set of our customer base. Very few of them, we have, again, large, sophisticated, resourceful. Very few of them have a single CMDB, so most of them have many. Mm-hmm. Most of them are not updated and inconsistent between each other. Yeah. So it might be that every IT operations team is bad, or it might be that there are just no good solutions out there that can be easily deployed and used by normal human beings.
I think it's a process issue. I think it's not a technology issue in my mind. It's not a people issue per se, because, okay, let's assume everybody's good and smart, and anything other than that would be a little bit arrogant. But I think it's fundamentally a lack of IT processes around things that are just not sexy.
But I think we see that in cybersecurity all the time. Like 10 years ago, I led a penetration testing team, and we saw a lot of SQL injection. Guess what they see now? It's a lot of SQL injection. So that's not that hard to solve, but it hasn't been solved.
That's an AppSec problem versus, but so yeah.
Yeah, but it's a coding problem. So
that's hard.
So let me put the vendors on the spot here. How many of you have certified integration with CMDBs where your products can actually update the CMDB? Because we all know assets are highly, let's call it volatile, especially in the cloud age now. I mean, if I'm spinning up and bringing down AMIs all the time, where's that real-time updating of the CMDB from my security tool into that CMDB to keep that accurate? Because I can't expect a human to do this.
Usually it's consumption, so you consume from the CMDB. The only thing I've seen that flips that around is using intelligence based on behavior of the traffic, that IP, to make some educated guesses on what that host is, so that you can add context if you think a breach is happening. But I haven't seen anything push back to the CMDB.
Why not?
I think that because
I don't think the IT ops trusts the security community.
Yeah, Tim, I think the situation is that the CMDBs today are managed, if at all, by IT operations. They, on a good day, after a lot of requests, may provide information back to the security team. They're not expecting and they want to receive probably things back. They don't care that much in many cases. I think what we're seeing actually, again, in our case and our other player case, actually they are using solutions like ours or other security management solutions de facto as a security CMDB. So actually security teams can relate to that as opposed to try to go back and ask for more favors from the IT operations side. No.
I'm gonna disagree there. So when I run a vulnerability scan, my customer is IT ops. And I'm providing them with information, and they want me to keep that CMDB up to date off of what I find, because they know that their records aren't that accurate. Again, servers get stood up all the time. Servers get decommissioned all the time. And as we move to the cloud, this is happening ever faster. So why can't my security tool, which is scanning, update that CMDB?
There's no technical limitation for that. And I think you are a unique customer from that perspective.
Yeah,
No,
I
seriously.
think I want to throw this one back to you as a customer. I mean, we have an integrated product, a next generation firewall, like many of our colleagues can offer customers, and we work hard these days in order to introduce capabilities or features into the product so that separate IT teams and security teams can run different aspects of the same product and not kind of a unified customer team having the entire view of IT and security on premises. So maybe part of the issue of integration is really that it's hard to integrate also on the customer's side all of the relevant functions to be able to manage a huge network, a developing network, a dynamic one.
That's why I'm at least expecting you to have open APIs, open and well-documented. Please.
Yeah, just like I guess the idea is talk about too many endpoints. Like throw in with some of the endpoints may not be traditional computing systems. Say you're a utility, you have connected cars, trucks out there with devices on them which only have connections, which maybe share a similar threat like Nash. How would you do in that case? This data is hard right now.
How about HVAC systems?
Yes.
Target to the white courtesy phone, please. Target.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to look at any asset really as in context of how we manage those at a networking level. We've gone away from some of the fundamentals of security in regards to segmentation, identification, and it gets a little bit more complex in doing this when the endpoint itself is almost abstracted. So roughly 1/3 of our employee base doesn't even come into our network every week. Most of our content and transactions are in third parties that are completely outside of our management layer, yet we still need to track that asset somehow. Within our enterprise, we can still apply some legacy models of VLAN tagging, segmentation, corporate production, NAC models. To go back to the earlier point, I think NAC is something that was incredibly beneficial in a lot of assets, organizations, but very, very difficult to implement, that could help the dynamic identification, assessment, and categorization of endpoints within our enterprise. But how do you do that on the internet as a whole when your workstation is roaming around and doing an authentication into an application? You really need to pop that up the layer and do that assessment at the authentication model, not unlike a Trusteer or some of the other solutions that have come out in the market, really in the financial services space. So I think there are capabilities to do an identification, a categorization, and a placement of that endpoint, whatever it might be, whether it's at a network level or at the application, i.e. authentication level, to really make sure it's identified, protected, and controlled appropriately. But that really goes to some very unique specifics about your environment.
So Mary, with HP's cloud there, your open cloud, what sort of security integration capabilities exist that have been built in that you, HP, could work with a Skybox, could work with a Checkpoint? What does that model look like, please?
So how would we integrate like a Skybox into our cloud solution?
Yeah, either as you're using a third-party tool to help better secure your public cloud, or if I'm a cloud customer on your service, and if I want to use Skybox or I want to use Checkpoint, some sort of capabilities there, integrating between my cloud and my on-premise model, what does that look like?
Right, so what we're working on right now is, so HP has ArcSight, which is a SIEM, which is one way to integrate technologies, at least to collect all of the logs and have visibility. And so we're working on putting that into the cloud, and so that we can collect, so nobody wants to take their enterprise data and move it into the cloud. But if I've got cloud services, I may also want to run, ArcSight in the cloud and collect data. So that's an area I see us moving into, which is providing the protections you normally had in your enterprise, and now moving them into the cloud so you can have the same protections there. And so ArcSight can ingest almost anything, giving you a lot of visibility and oversight into your security posture, both in your enterprise and then in the cloud.
But I expect that because that's within your ecosystem. What if I don't want to use ArcSight? What if I want to use Sumo Logic instead? What sort of integration capabilities is HP designing there?
So ArcSight can ingest the Sumo Logic logs too, but they wouldn't be, so Sumo Logic is a cloud-based solution, so you can anybody could send their logs to Sumo Logic from the HP cloud. I don't think you need a special integration for that.
Okay. Gidi, you had made a point earlier with regards to who's the onus on as far as the technology and the nicheness of the technology. Do customers really want to adopt this sometimes because it's yet another product? They may not have training for that product. They probably don't if it's new. They may not understand how to integrate that new capability into their existing processes. You're pushing back here a little bit on the integrations. Say more about that, please.
Yeah, so at least on the management layer, where we play, we see kind of integration is one of the most critical components. So without actually seamless, at least from the customer perspective, we may work very hard behind the scenes, but without seamless integration to any environment, especially on the large enterprise one, very tough, right, to convince someone to play with your tool. Just a fact. So I think that a lot of the responsibility, at least on the management layer, probably other layers as well, is on the vendors to make sure that they make the life of the customer as easy as possible, both in terms of the integration, dealing with whatever they invested in the past. So you cannot come to, let's say, you and say, whatever you purchased last year, throw it away because I have a different gadget for you. You just can't do that in enterprise market. So I think the onus is on the vendor side, right, to make it easy to deal with whatever is there in terms of integration out of the box, the ability to really automate and make sure that very small teams, and most of the security teams, relative to the size of the organizations, are tiny. I mean, most of the security teams are dealing with tasks that should have maybe 10 times more resources, which of course can never be justified. So automation, the ease of use, ease of integration are probably the most critical components in the management layer.
Okay. So, please.
If I may, one aspect of integration is that I think that Gidi focused on is integration with the customer's environment and maybe other systems. I think you're pushing more to vendor versus vendor integration, so that you as a customer may more work like with the Lego building blocks, connecting one another, and not necessarily going through projects of integration So certainly, from the customer's point of view, you should push for more, you should push for better integration between your cloud products, on-premise products, mobile security products, and stuff like that. I think the situation is not that bad, but we need to discuss it anyway. And I'll give you, once again, we are all very kind of easy to get information from others and integrate it into our product, and not so much about exporting information and making it available for other products to make good use of. But if we have here, point products are critical. So you do want point products because this is where the innovation comes. This is how you solve new problems that were not solved so far. You need people focused on niche problems and find the innovative ways to solve them. Check Point has been offering open API to the enforcement. So if you have a point product and you want to deploy it in your network, Check Point can do the enforcement for you, in the sense that if you have a light cyber, we'll talk about these guys, and you want to introduce this new product because it does things that you believe are have an clear advantage for you as a customer, you should be able to immediately integrate this new product with a Check Point firewall, I believe with other firewalls as well, in order so that on the enforcement side of things, it's basically the same product. It's you get a single point, you get logs in the same place, you get a clear view of why things were allowed or blocked in your network, whether it's Check Point made the decision or an external product that you've decided to deploy. And we have many startups that we like to work with along that line.
So Yoav, you obviously fund startups, including several cybersecurity startups. What role does potential integration play in your determination of whether or not you're actually going to fund that startup?
Well, I think the most interesting thing, whether it's spoken or unspoken, the most interesting thing is really M&A at the end of the day, right? So, the ultimate integration is when companies actually integrate, right? And that's actually when we make money and when our founders make money. So it's kind of nice to bring out some M&A of this past year that's been very interesting, and maybe that's a topic for the panel, maybe not, but FireEye's acquisition of Mandiant and Palo Alto Networks, acquisition of Cyvera, and Proofpoint's acquisition of NetCitadel, and Bit9's acquisition of Carbon Black. So, I mean, I think these are all products that were not too tightly integrated before the acquisition, and now, you know, you can argue maybe they are, maybe they're not, but I think that's why we're in the business.
But that's kind of forced integration as opposed to a little more proactive.
Yeah, just one point. I mean, going back to the earlier point that the integrations are not as bad as maybe we're making it out to be. I think they are pretty bad, especially on the legacy on-prem software where the onus is placed on the customer to do the integration. And I'm not referring necessarily between vendor A to vendor A products and services, but vendor A to vendor B. Right. And fundamentally, it gets into some basic problems. One, there's no openness of the APIs to interoperate the solutions. The partnership might be there, but the internal development resources within those two companies to make sure that the integration is done seamless and bugs and checks and features as they go throughout time and versions are constantly updated and integrated is rarely ever done. In addition to that, what we see is that a lot of the development resources go, which is natural, especially when you're an early company, to new feature functionality and really driving to what that customer demand is. Integrations has never, in my mind, historically been on par with new feature functionality that could be a new release, a new marketing campaign, or an integrated release schedule. It's not going to get you net new ARR, net new customer base. It is going to really sustain the existing customer base that you have. And it's a bit of a mind shift that what is the business of integrations and how it facilitates additional moats, or how does it facilitate a alliance model where it can really own and dominate the market. Until you actually accomplish that, it's always going to be a back-ended kind of objective.
Yeah. As a customer too, I'll second that.
I would chime in though that I totally agree, but I'm also feeling from like enterprises, they're tired of being science experiments. They're like, just give me something that works, that ties into my network. You told me about this sweet thing, and you came in and installed it, and then it took me so much effort to keep it up and running that I just dropped it. Like, I've literally been asked, don't make me part of another science experiment.
So I would agree with that, but I think the other challenge that I face, I think Justin and other customers face too, is how many management consoles do I need? You know, I've got probably 15 or 16 different management consoles. Where's my management console for my management consoles? Now, I'll pick on Symantec since I used to work at Symantec, and Symantec actually tried that many years ago. It was probably a decade ago with a capability called CISO, the Semantic Enterprise Security Architecture. Be quite honest, it was a complete flop. It never went anywhere. And I don't see that anyone has recreated that or tried to do that again, but that's really what we need. And so, I mean, I would be looking for a large security vendor like HP to try and attempt to do that, so that the smaller security players, whether it's Skybox, whether it's the smaller or medium-sized checkpoint, can feed into that. But that's really what I'm looking for, is that integrated management capability.
I think you're starting to see it, but not in the legacy models. So the disruptive security vendors that are coming out are specifically playing in part and parcel on that model. So the Sky Highs and Netscopes. How do we get the monitoring and detective controls put in place? And then how do we drive to reactive corrective controls? Not on legacy enterprises, but as the employees and cloud services are out there.
Yep, I agree with you there, Justin. The problem is that now, again, I've bifurcated my model because, and actually I cut it into three, because I've got my legacy on-premise model that I still have to deal with. I have my own use of SaaS applications, and for us that's 19 of them currently, going to 45 on the roadmap. And now what about my pure cloud play operations? So who's going to bridge all of that?
Yeah, so I completely agree with that. I would say that I would not look for the solution to come from a Symantec, a McAfee/Int'l, or CA. I do think that a solution could come from an innovative startup focusing on this space. It is just not going to get market share. It's just not going to get the voice within the larger company, because right at the outset, prove to me how this is going to be a $1 billion revenue stream. Not going to happen, but a startup could actually get some traction and change into that.
Yeah, I would say, Tim, in general, I believe, and again, I haven't seen many vendors, including Skybox, but also others that are still doing it yet, but I believe there's tremendous opportunity in actually dealing with this hybrid situation, which every enterprise will have, almost everyone, right? You'll have a lot of SaaS applications, you'll have tons of legacy. If you want to remember, utilities are running on something, right? Hardware, right? They're not running on the cloud. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of legacy, a lot of private cloud, a lot of public cloud capabilities, and I think that there's going to be tremendous capability both on the enforcement layer or technical controls and the management layer to have actually a holistic view of the enterprise in all of those processes. But that requires a lot of innovation because it's actually putting different abstractions from different domains into one console, which is a big challenge, but a big opportunity probably.
Yeah. But if I stay away from the A word, and I'm worried about my endpoints here, I can't even find a solution that works for Windows, Mac, and various flavors of Linux, let alone Android, iOS, let alone my Nissan Leaf, 2 years from now. That's a corporate asset, et cetera. So how do I bring all of this together? How do I get some sort of integration, some sort of unified management capability?
I wouldn't look at startups for this. So while we need innovation, I think integration is a huge effort. It's a huge technical effort. It's far easier, and that's very difficult by itself, to develop a niche product, to get the understanding of what it takes to integrate many technologies is a huge engineering effort. So, and if we are not yet there, and I agree that we are not yet there, even though I claim that it's not as bad as one could describe it, I mean, we, and maybe you as customers, first and foremost, need to make the integration a bigger business case for your vendors. So right, I mean, we do what's best in our view for the business. We invest in integration, but we invest more money where we believe we're gonna see more revenues. And you need to find the ways to make it clear for us as vendors, the integration pays, I mean, that you're ready to pay for an integration ready for open APIs, for better products in that sense, and not just in the specific features and capabilities.
Yes, Ron, I think it's starting to happen. Again, representing us, right, Skybox and other companies in our space who are not unique in that, from our perspective, integration is not a burden, right, like for a lot of vendors, but it's actually a competitive edge, significant one. So we can, for over 10 years, develop 100 connectors, right, out of the box. We're now in a rate of producing a new connector to a new product every 3 weeks. Okay, that's the current rate over the last year or two. So yeah, we see this competitive edge because it's required in management, and I think, again, other management layers, regardless if it's a HP-sized company or mid-sized companies or Skybox and our competitors, I think starting to see that. So
And how does Skybox make that business decision that they're going to support a connector from company A versus company P versus whatever? What is that done on the basis of market share? Is that done on the basis of your building an actual ecosystem and looking for some sort of platform approach?
No, it's a good question. Initially, of course, when we started, it was based on strategic decision, right, where we want to go, which are the most important vendors. But when you're serving hundreds of customers, you don't have to be a product management genius to know what is required. Customers are telling you. You deploy the product, you are selling it, and it doesn't work because you didn't connect to 7 more firewalls they forgot they had, and it happens every day. So actually what we're very customer-driven. We don't need to guess. We just have kind of hundreds of customers, thousands of opportunities in the pipeline. We just see. Okay.
We struggle to keep up with that many connectors, though. So ArcSight has like 300 connectors, but if you think about releasing an update for each one of them, it would be almost a year before you got to the next one. So also, when you think about manual integration via like a connector to a specific product, it becomes unwieldy after time to get all of your engineering expense goes to keeping up these connectors. So it's a challenge we have.
I was going to say, so say more about that, please, Mary. I mean, what level of effort by HP, and obviously very big company, goes into keeping those connectors up to date? How many engineers, how many hours? Is that a third of the engineering effort? What does that look like?
I'm not sure how big of a percentage it is, but I know it's big enough that they can't keep up with it. So we get complaints that the connectors aren't up to date. And so we're trying to think about alternate ways to do this. Maybe we crowdsource some things. Maybe we have an app store. Maybe, I don't know. We're thinking about how to deal with it. But But it becomes clear you can't just grow this to 600 connectors and then 6,000 connectors and update everyone every time there's a new product release with Checkpoint or Cisco.
So Splunk isn't perfect, but Splunk has done a pretty good job with the apps on Splunk and trying to get some of the vendors to do them. Splunk does some of them, et cetera.
Splunk also uses the HP smart connectors. They ride on our coattails all the time, so they take advantage of the work that we've done as well.
Well, good. If it's good for your customers.
It's smart.
Please.
Yes, I'm having a question. I'm talking here as a customer. I'm a customer of Skybox, and I'm integrating with the REST services, open APIs. And it seems to me, yes, it seems to me that as a customer, it's very important that you will have some continuous support, because like after I integrate it and it's working for a certain model, the network is being changed and we need to keep it updated, and the support of the customer is very important. Also, API simulator that I can record, because like sometimes as a customer I'm using the desktop Skybox and it's working very nice, but when I'm using the APIs, it gives different results.
Okay.
And for something like this, and for something like this, I expect like the company, and it's a remark for all the companies, that you can use the APIs and record it and send it back to the support.
Sure.
But if you have some simulation of your open APIs, then it really reflects the real data that,
True.
I as a customer get in.
True.
And
So let me relate to that, Tim, and maybe answer the same question you asked Mary about R&D resources and support. Yes, so because there's a need, again, on the management layer, regardless if it's HP or Skybox or any other type of solution, it's a significant investment. And I would say, let's say on our end, probably 40% of R&D is just to develop and maintain and all of that connectors. Probably you had another 10-15% just for APIs, etc. And I would say that probably at least 50% of our support resource, like tickets, bugs, fixes, etc., are around the integration. And true, it requires a lot of commitment from the vendor to deal with it, solve problems quickly, because if they rely on us or other vendors for making decisions security, they want to make decisions, right? And have to rely on reliable data and correct analytics, etc.
Okay, so we've heard a figure from Skybox, we've heard a figure from HP. Your turn, Ron, to be on the hot seat there. What level of effort is Checkpoint putting into this?
I don't know the numbers. They're probably far lower than what my colleagues here quoted. We are, and I think, by this description of having to maintain hundreds of connectors with the developing and changing products, it doesn't really scale. There should be another way. There should be open APIs. There should be standards. We're not upgrading our phone whenever the provider changes something on the other end. There must be a different way to do it. I think the standards are developing. Once again, it's easier around the threat intelligence than in other areas. There should be better standards, and we support several standards around management. Basically, you could management from one of our management consoles, several different other products, but it doesn't really, it's not at the level that you as a customer would like it to be. And so I think that everybody's focus should not be on maintaining and updating connectors, but on finding the generic ways for different vendors to exchange information and all the way from intelligence to enforcement data.
Okay. So any other questions from the audience, please? Seeing none. Okay, please.
What are you doing to bridge the talent gap? I work at a university. 70% of my graduate students are foreign students who don't stay here in America. What are you guys doing to invest to get talent up to speed? We all know what that is.
HP's got a big strategy to grow the talent, so we have a big program to take students that are coming out of college and really grow them within HP, and we want to be a seeder actually for the community. So a couple of things we do is we'll place a headquarters near a university where there's not a lot of competition, and if we can take the top 2% of that university, that's really great talent, and there's not a lot of competition around So we've done that. But yet we can't find the skills, and when you find them, you have to pay a premium for them. But HP's position is it's part of our job as the security community because we have the size to grow the talent. But it's really challenging right now. So, and then we also have a program with the military, wounded warriors, bringing them in.
So let me tweak the question slightly. Do any of you hire someone as an integration specialist? Do you hire people specifically to do product integrations? You do?
Yeah, we absolutely do. We just have big teams that just do that, and it's a mixed expertise of, and if they don't have the expertise, we teach them about network security and all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, you need to build right a machine, an organizational machine, to develop connectors, to make sure that they are good quality, that can be maintained frequently and all of that stuff, and yeah, we have people that are specializing in that.
Okay. All right, I think we're just about out of time, but before we go, any last comments from any of the panelists, please?
Yeah, so kind of switching hats a little bit from a consumer of stuff as a Box as a company. One of the interesting things about Box is it's really a platform, RESTful APIs, et cetera. And the reason why I bring that up is when I get into a lot of conversations of integrations with security solutions that are out there, it's very, very easy. Here's our RESTful APIs, complete parity and all functionality from a endpoint development cycle, whether you want to create your own endpoints or whether you want to do a deep integration, say, with a GRC or something else. And that allows an incredibly easy integration model for any other partner that you want to bring on, or if that company wants to create their own unique application. And I do see that as the model moving forward. There's a couple of unique-isms depending upon the software solution that we're really talking about. But as you look at the other cloud providers, they're starting to adopt a true API model that I think is going to be a significant change in how we do integrations in the future.
So do you, Box, have a formal security partner integration program?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We have many of them. Some of them are, some of the products within HP, as well as each and every stack as you go down the line. One of the things that we're pushing forward pretty soon is more clarity and transparency in regards to our partnerships and at what level of the control model do they play so that our customers can get really good visibility into how that model solution fits within their entire ecosystem.
Okay, good. Okay, well, with that said, I'd like to thank our bachelors and bachelorette for being part of the dating game today in this unique seating arrangement. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, and please enjoy the rest of the day.